Hey guys, it's me Meteor, and welcome to another edition of What is Kirby Canon? Today we're going to be talking about Meteonelfilis and the Starries. This story begins with a crystallized heart-shaped meteor falling into the new world, similar in appearance to the Jamba heart. This one isn't sealed by heart spears though, but something else entirely. Something it manages to shut off completely before it lands, causing a volcano to emerge from the water. So then, what was sealing it? What was being sealed? How did it get here? And why now? The special Astronomer Waddle Dee is at least able to answer a couple questions for us, as he became a bit of a meteor lore enthusiast, studying what is referred to in Japan as the legend of meteors. I don't know about a legend, but I guess if you look where I am, I did travel real far to get here. Okay, that's the last self-referential joke I'm going to make, I swear. Anyway, he states that according to legend, many meteors have landed in this world before, and that this one could be the one referred to as the Star of Darkness, which can bring about a disaster consuming everything. So about on par with most Kirby villains then. Either way, the legend also states that stars of light can prevent or seal the disaster from happening, and wouldn't you know it, those stars of light, or rather Starries, were exactly what flew off the meteor before it landed. These Starries, otherwise known as planet protectors or guardians of the stars in Japan, are spirits born from gems that can travel through space and time. They also have the capability of turning themselves into crystals, which they did to originally seal the Star of Darkness in question, though they only had the capability to seal while grouped together. They're basically useless on their own. Kinda like Unknown. Wow, referencing them sure takes me back. Anyway, it's interesting to note that the English version of this figure is generic and vague about what it once sealed, simply stating it was capable of destroying the entire galaxy. For this reason, one could easily think it was just referring to the events of this game. The Japanese version, however, states they once crystallized and sealed the strongest enemy likely to destroy the galaxy. This is particularly interesting because in Japan, that's exactly how Galactonite is described in the unlock text for Meta Nightmare Returns. Therefore, it is most likely referring to him. Regardless, I guess it's time we discuss the real heart of this story. What exactly were the Starries sealing away? Well, Elfilis' brother. Their cooler brother, if you will. Genwelly Meteonelfilis. Wow, that name just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? The figurine featuring them both states that he came to the planet after sensing the failure of his kin. Now, being a star-crossed world can take place either during or after the events of the main story, it may not refer to their defeat from Kirby, but rather the events that caused Fecto to be captured in the first place, at least initially. But we'll get more into that later. The point is, he's here now, and according to the evil Meteor'z figurine, if it wasn't for the Starries veering him off course, he would have hit and likely sunk the last continent on the planet. Wait. Last? Yeah, so apparently the legend of Meteor'z Astronomer Dee discussed earlier mentions that the meteors coming in could sometimes sink continents or threaten the existence of living things. I don't think those two statements are mutually exclusive, but I digress. Either way, as stated in Genwelly's figurine, islands were sinking around the same time as ID F-86's discovery, proving the legend to be true and not just a fairy tale. This is honestly one of the most interesting points to me. In the original game, I always wondered what caused the inhabitants of the New World to leave it in the first place, and the game never really said, at least in the North American version. Even Japan's version only stated they left due to overpopulation without really elaborating. Now, it makes perfect sense. If all the islands and continents were starting to sink, never mind Fecto Elfilis barreling in, then clearly it was very apparent they had to get out of there immediately. Overpopulation, while a definite side effect of the whole mess, was clearly not the main issue at hand. So how would they escape then? Well, we already know from the main game they basically reversed engineered the spatial teleportation abilities Fecto had into their own warp technology. But now, thanks to the DLC, we can see exactly what devices they used to accomplish this. Here, we get the first glimpse at the New World spaceship, an early version of the ships the people of the past warped to other galaxies with. That sure looks familiar, doesn't it? Yep, that looks exactly like the cockpit of the Lore's Starcutter. If this doesn't confirm the residents in the New World being the ancients Magolor spoke of, I'm not sure what will. Of course, being as the Legend of Meteor'z was written long before their time, hence needing to be researched in the first place, they must have their own group of ancients. Not like the ones who travel the stars, but still. There was even a poem likely written around the same time that wasn't even fully deciphered. That is, until a singer who went by Nichelle had a breakthrough in a dream and wrote a song based on that very poem. This song didn't even debut until the inhabitants were leaving the planet to provide them with hope. In fact, this song continued to play long after everyone left the planet, not just in the New World, but even throughout the galaxy. Though not everyone left the planet, some even wished to stay, Nichelle being one of those few. While Welcome to the New World and Twinkling Star Showers were the two songs she was known for, there was another song that no one else had ever heard, one that she never finished, her last song. If her last finished song didn't debut until everyone was leaving, it's clear she was working on this when everyone who wanted to already left. There is a lot to take in with this song, as it references a lot of Kirby games. But to be honest, it's hard to draw any true conclusions from it, as some of the lines can be interpreted or translated several different ways. For example, this English line, artificial, heartificial, my pulse pounds, could either be translated in Japanese as reliant on AI, even my heart is a machine, or even the heart is a machine. As you can see, the difference can be huge based on what the true interpretation is. Considering the following verse, could this be exactly what I wished for, or is this really my wish? It could just be referring to Stardream failing to grant wishes from the events of Planet Robobot. If, however, the line refers to her heart as a machine, that can change a lot, as when you combine it with this line stating, I don't have my white wings yet, but that won't matter soon, it could very well be referring to the Lore's Starcutter and her AI possibly powering it. That would make sense, considering how much teleportation or moving from place to place is referenced in the song, but still, we can't really say for sure. She could easily just mean angelic wings, as if to say she's not dead yet, but accepts her fate regardless. But let's move away from Nichelle for now and focus on the main topic. I mentioned earlier how Genwell may not have originally came for Kirby specifically, though even if that was the case, it's quite clear he's aware of Kirby now. We can see this in Galactal's figurine description. Not only does it state that Genwell created these to directly attack and eliminate the Starries that sealed it, but that they found Kirby to be a threat and deemed him their enemy. Even further, is that while the story of Star-Crossed World can take place anytime throughout the main game, the finale is only accessible after saving Elflin from Lab Discovera, and, by extension, defeating his sibling. Considering Genwell was able to sense their failure from across the galaxy, you better believe he would be able to sense their death and the one responsible while resting on the very planet it happened at. Therefore, when Kirby does try to reseal him after fighting the Starries, Genwell goes full-on rage mode, immediately breaks out of the seal, and proceeds to absorb the very things that tried to seal him. Much like Meteor'z did when absorbing Elflin, this allows Genwell to transform into his perfect life form, seemingly a trait of their species. Genwell really makes it a point to prove he's the big brother too. Can I say how awesome it was to just see him grab a skyscraper like this to smack Kirby with, absolute perfection. But, like all things with Kirby, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, leading to the inevitable ball form, now equipped with a Galactonite style seal for protection. Not like it helps much, mind you, but it was a valiant effort at least. Though, unlike most villains, Genwell doesn't truly die after his defeat, he simply gets resealed by the now freed Starries. There's always a joke concerning Kirby villains, that they either reform and become friends, or die forever. Well, except Kracko, but that's a different topic. Using this logic, could this mean that maybe someday Genwell will come back reformed? Elfland is at least hopeful that will be the case. He explains that perhaps, while traveling with the Starries, their hearts can connect, and maybe someday, when he wakes up again, they could be friends, believing deep down even Genwell has a gentle heart. It's possible Elfland even knows this from experience. He states that he feels he was once wrapped in the gentle light of the Starries far in the past, and maybe how he was able to hear their voices throughout the game. If that is the case, perhaps that's what led to Meteor'z split in the first place, Elfland being a result of the Starries' influence that didn't fully take effect before landing in the new world. Who knows. Interestingly, he also mentions hearing the voice of a singer who sang with hope and a hint of sadness. He is obviously talking about Nichelle. In fact, he states Elflis targeted the planet because they were drawn to that voice. How ironic, the voice that brought hope and eventually prophecy to the planet's inhabitants was what ultimately put it in danger. Speaking of Elflis, I suppose there is one last thing we can talk about, their Lord of Chaos form, the form they take after absorbing the power from their brother's spear, one of which they traveled through dimensions to obtain. According to this figure, their species creates different weapons based on what they've absorbed to become perfect. Therefore, by taking his spear, that would mean on top of their own, the Beast Packs, and Morphonite's power, never mind what other victims it absorbed in the past, they now have the power of Genwell and Starries in there too. That means, if Elfland takes in the light of this form, he'd easily have a DNA composition that even puts Samus to shame. Now, obviously Elfland can't just absorb Vecto's light a second time, so either this battle replaces the old one for the canon ending, or it's just a what if Elflis had the power of Genwell too situation. Either way, the overall ending doesn't change regardless, so it doesn't really matter overall, I guess. Some of their new attacks were cool at least, such as Drosh's Paramatter and the final nail in Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright's coffin. Man oh man did that video age well. But if we're being honest, the attacks, while being neat references, don't really add much to the lore themselves, and they certainly don't answer any questions that were already there from the previous version of the boss. Though, who knows, maybe Elfland or Genwell will come back, and if they do, maybe some of those answers will become clear. Crystal clear. As for now, that's everything we can talk about concerning either one. So I'll see you guys next time.